Hey everybody, my name's Mike Evans and I'm the dude behind DIY RPG Productions. Welcome to the first episode of Q&A, where you ask questions and I give answers that you probably don't give a shit about. With that, the disclaimer is in the links below, and let's get this episode started. This episode of Q&A will be focusing on my Kickstarter, Orcs, a high octane adventure. There's links in the description below. These are questions that the community asked, and I'm taking a moment to answer. And remember, there are no stupid questions.
What's a Nubian?
Shut the fuck up.
Question 1.
Are the cards going to be laid out like a map of the train?
You can absolutely lay the cards out in a way that builds your train. I've done it in the past where I had the cards face down and flipped them over for the players. Not that really has much of a use. I would just draw a number of cards personally and then compare them. Here's the table of contents, and it lets you see, how many different carriages there are and whatnot. And obviously the book's not finished yet, so please take this with a grain of salt until it's done. But here's some illustration. This one's by Alex Mayo. Background train, that's Illo by Carmen Vance. Another one by Alex. So there's permanent carriages, starting carriage, the fuel carriage, and the engine car. It's a piece by Brittany Groves. Now, when you get into the actual trains itself, each carriage has a point, and I'll use my hand here. You can see the supply carriage and whatnot. The stats for the monsters are on each page. At least most of them are, and each one tells you what's going to happen. Some of these carriages have events, like so right here, passenger carriage. There's an event. You get into this. There's 2 to 3 people sitting in there, and then there is a D10 event that keeps the adventure fresh. Every time that I've run this, a lot of times there's something very different. A human abomination monster by Alex Mayo. An empty slot of art. That's what the Kickstarter's for. But this gives you the idea of how you can lay this out in a way that is practical and fun. Question 2.
Okay, so this adventure's in Hubris, but where?
The adventure takes place somewhere in between Fairweather in the Great Plains of Unbidden Sorrow and heading on its way to a small boomtown called Kellis, which is in the land of perpetual stone and mire. Just someplace in that nebulous area. Sometimes I put it in the Great Plains, and other times I've had it just as it's crossing over into that gray land. It adds a little more ominous feeling, I think, when it's in the land of perpetual stone and mire. It tends to be more deadly, and the players, if they ever try to get off the train, feel much more isolated. And then you can channel shit like The Thing, that limited resources in a majorly hostile environment. Question 3.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how fucked up is it? Downton Abbey fucked up, or Eraserhead fucked up?
Body horror-wise, I'd say I'm on the scale of 8 to 11. There's quite a few examples of how fun this is. John Carpenter's The Thing was a huge influence on me and how I approached horror with Hubris. That movie is so goddamn amazing. Now on the BDSM scale, nothing beats Downton Abbey. Those fuckers were up to some kinky shit. Question 4.
Okay, how bound to DCC is this? Could it be modified to Dark Trails? Or whatever?
Hubris was built and designed with Dungeon Crawl Classics in mind. I built it from the ground up to use those rules. But any system that uses a D&D variant, easily convertible. Other systems, I don't know, to be honest. I would expect it not to be terribly hard. If you're talking about Dark Trails by Stiff Whisker Press, then absolutely it is super easy to convert. It's built off of DCC as well. A phenomenally fun game with great art. Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. I mean, just you need to know the mechanics well enough to understand in Hubris, this kind of is a hard monster, and now I need to equate it to Dark Trails or whatever as a hard monster if we're talking about the Call of Cthulhu system that's percentile die. I'm not that familiar with the system. It's not my bag, to be honest. I just said I didn't like the Call of Cthulhu system.
I am so sorry.
Question 5.
How much pork would an orc dork hork if an orc dork did hork pork?
An orc dork can't hork any amount of pork, so an orc dork can't hork pork. But if an orc dork could hork pork, and they were from Hubris, I mean, the fact that Hubris orcs do 100 push-ups and sit-ups every morning before taking their abominations for a walk, I'd say 4 to 5 Miss Piggies. Question 6. How many damn questions are there?
So, what's different about Hubris orcs?
I designed Hubris orcs to be nasty. I wanted orcs to be savage, disgusting creatures. I wanted to de-World of Warcraft them. I just wanted them to be terrifying monsters. They were inspired by the Reavers in Firefly and the Serenity movie. They're vicious, they're murderous, they can't be reasoned with. They mutilate themselves and others, and they use alchemical baths to create abominations by throwing different creatures into it and something new and horrible. They may be terrible, but they make a mean souffle. Question 7.
Oh, good. Another adventure infused with heavy metal. So, what were your inspirations?
A lot of the bands and music that really influenced me with Hubris and Orcs was thrash metal from the 80s and 90s in particular. Some of the things in the thousands inspired me as well, but mostly that area. And then there was the musical and music video aspects from both Tool videos and Marilyn Manson videos. Both of their videos, especially from the 90s, the Anima album, Antichrist Superstar, well, for Manson, really, Mechanical Animals and Hollywood. But all of them, the visuals in them, I think, are very evocative and were something that definitely inspired a lot of the old horror, kind of that strange visualization. The biggest influence, though, really had to be Huey Lewis, though. I mean, it just oozes out of Hubris. Question 8. Please, God, make it stop.
So, they're not really asking a question, but this person would like to hear more about the gunslinger. Pew pew!
With Hubris, I wanted to incorporate some of that colonial American or colonialism era feel to it, you know, that level of clothing and design, as well as wheel-lock firearms. I've always had a soft spot for that, even when I first started role-playing. So I knew I wanted to take the mighty deeds from the warrior and add it to a cocksure style character. So to me, that was the gunslinger. And I was also inspired by the art from Darkest Dungeon, and I thought that would be really cool to incorporate into the Hubris game. And there is a link for the original version of the gunslinger, honestly I don't know how much has changed, in the description below. Question 9.
And what are those lovely mounts the orcs are riding?
Those are flying squid abominations. They were largely inspired by the same kind of creature almost as you see in Gears of War. I just loved when those things landed on the ground. They'd roar and you would engage in some pretty cool combat. And I remember the first time fighting in that thing and I was like, holy shit! So I really wanted to capture that feel. And every time I have run the game, I always open with the first scene introducing the players in the car, and they hear roars, and this squid comes flying by, and I always have an orc on top of the squid abomination. Always have him riding on top, and he's throwing a spear up in the air, fist pumping, and he's pelvic thrusting. Let me tell you, that really sets the tone. Then that orc smashes through the front window, one through the back window, and then you have a pincer attack, immediate combat, boom. I kill everybody, and the adventure's over, and I get to go home and have a couple beers. I am such an engaging GM. Question 10. I long for death's sweet embrace.
Who built those trains and laid those tracks?
Is this a sexual innuendoous question? The Black Queen and her patron, the floating island of terror, designed the trains, I guess, through magic and machinations. And then slaves from all over Hubris built that shit. Question 11.
How deadly is it? It's deadly. It is, isn't it? Can you tone it down a bit?
Hubris is a super deadly setting. But yeah, you could tone down the lethality, drop the creatures by 1 hit die or half a hit die or whatever, drop their attack down a bit. I find that a glass of warm milk helps ease the pain for people who can't handle when their characters die. Question 12. Thank God we're at the end.
What inspired Orcs? How does it play? What do you mean, how does it play? What kind of question is that?
There were 3 major sources of inspiration for Orcs. Snowpiercer is a phenomenal movie, and it's action-packed. It's got really cool environments. It's got just so much going on for it that's nonsensical but amazing at the same time. And it really was a fun thought to have a railroaded adventure, and yes, pun intended on that.
We've been watching you. Precisely 74% of you shall die.
Mad Max Fury Road will now forever be an inspiration in pretty much every damn thing I do. But that high octane, non-stop action of that movie was something I knew I really wanted to capture.
We are not things!
Where is she taking them? I want them back!
And the final one is Gears of War, the first game. It's really fun. Again, there is just a lot of action going on, and I just loved a lot of the monster designs in it. Again, obviously, the squid played a big influence on me, but I wanted to capture that non-stop action and brutality and just shit going crazy. The fun thing about it, at least I hope it comes across as fun, is that I have a table for if the players decide to jump ship. You will encounter stuff. You could also use the lay of the land and encounter tables in Hubris, but now you have a whole marauding force of orcs coming after you. Orcs plays pretty fast. The combat can be pretty brutal, and I've watched players really start exercising a lot of caution. The fun thing to let them know is that players who think that they're being smart and are going to climb up above the car, just smile at them and say, yeah, there's a table for that too. In all the playthroughs I've done, people are more afraid about going above the cars than actually the horrors and the shit that are inside the cars. Maybe it's being exposed, being open, or that I've chucked a few characters off the side of the train and they get run over. All right, that's it, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the first Q&A focusing on Orcs. All the links are in the description below, and if you like the channel, please like the video, comment if you want to, and subscribe, as I will release more content as I am able. Be well, everybody.
What's a new being? Bitch, you almost made me laugh.
So listen, I was wondering if you wanted to do butt stuff tonight.
Are you rolling?
Mm-hmm. I'm getting you in there.
How much pork... Fuck. How much pork would an orc dork hork if an orc dork did hork pork? Hold on. How much pork would an orc... Wait. How much pork would an orc dork... Just let me do it. Just let me do it. How much pork would an orc dork hork if an orc dork did hork pork? You ruined it. How much pork would an orc dork hork if an orc dork did hork pork?